Start.
Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis fight Max von Sydow in William Shakespeare's Strange Brew tonight on Cinema de Fromage.
Somewhere, behind granite battlements, beyond impenetrable gates, indoors, something evil is brewing, and it isn't Elsinore beer. Here, an unsuspecting heiress has become the innocent pawn of a diabolical genius. At his command, space-age super lasers that can incinerate an entire metropolis. An army of deadly hockey warriors. At his fingertips, lots of beer.
Just one more test, then we're ready for the world.
What fool dares stand in his way?
Good day, I'm Bob McKenzie. This is my brother Doug. How's it going, eh? Welcome to our movie, eh?
At last, television's Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis have just hit the great white screen. These are the adventures of Bob and Doug McKenzie. Strange Brew.
That's private company business.
Perhaps one of these would refresh your memory, eh?
The gallant champions of truth.
He's lying, all right. I don't need no machine to tell me that, hey. I didn't do it, I swear. It must be them.
Justice.
I think it's time the little lady and I had a chat.
And the pursuit of bad guys.
We'll move towards Oktoberfest as planned.
I can't believe it. He drank it all.
Oh, no!
And I will not underestimate our little friends again.
With Mac Francido,
Shut up!
Paul Dooley,
You murdered him first. He was already dead when I killed him.
Lynn Griffin,
If I didn't have puke breath, I'd kiss you.
and an all-star cast.
Take off, you boy. You take off, you nut. Okay.
Don't miss the biggest, the grandest, the first Mackenzie Brothers movie of all time. The Adventures of Bob and Doug McKenzie.
I'd like to thank the Academy. That's it. We're leaving, kids. Come on.
Strange Brew.
Those of you want to see our movie doesn't matter. Hey, Cop, it's only a preview, eh? I didn't want to show them the best part. Okay, so that's our topic for today.
So good day. Welcome to Cinema de Fromage after a little bit of a hiatus. We're back with a little bit of Canadiana here with tonight's movie. The full name being The Adventures of Bob and Doug McKenzie, Strange Brew from 1982?
83.
Okay, filmed in 82. And one of the films I suggest because I just want to feel nostalgic for the look of Toronto back in the day, where it was shot. And the skyline does not look like that anymore. Anyways, so with me are the usual suspects. We have Kente.
Hey,
There's going to be a lot of that tonight, I'm sure. We've got Jen. How are we doing, Jen?
I'm great, and I'm not even going to attempt it. Aloha, everybody.
don't be a hoser.
Hawaiian hoser. Okay.
Take off. Oh, okay.
Oh, there she did it. And Joshua, how are we doing, E?
Well, we're doing pretty good, eh? I guess this is the podcast, huh?
Yep, that's what it is, all right. So, yes. So anyone who's ever had a sort of stereotypical idea of how Canadians speak, probably got it from this film, which is, one of my favorites. One of the only films I think out of SCTV. Yeah, that it is. Okay, so, which caused a little bit of dissension in the ranks of the other cast members when these guys got this breakout film out and album at the same time from basically a throwaway sketch that was done as to thumb their nose at the CBC. Anyways, so before I go into all those boring details, I think tonight it's Jen who has to explain what the movie's about.
Oh, it is?
It is.
Oh, geez.
See if you were paying attention.
So, okay, before I say what this movie was about, I want to say that I actually saw this when it came out. I didn't see it in theater. Oh no, I did see it in theater. But it was one of the first movies that like I ever got into that I wasn't actually supposed to go to. People just took me, and I just sort of went in with a group, and explaining what this movie was to my parents afterwards was almost impossible. You
just said you went and saw a foreign film.
Well, just sort of as a because I don't know how many people. It's not how many people would remember 1983. It's remembering what was sort of around that SCTV moment in time. And my mom always thought about it like it was some kind of terrible societal influence. Not that the humor was bad, but that it was basically encouraging people to do things that were terrible and saying, well, that's just funny. And my mom did not. She was so upset with me that I went to go see this. And as I watched this again, I was like, oh my God, parents in the 80s were so clueless. This movie is so mild. There is.
Oh yeah.
It's just great. I think Happy Gilmore is a little bit more on edge than Strange Brew.
The price is wrong, bitch.
Okay, so this is what I'm gonna paraphrase what this was about, right? Okay. So and then I'll read the actual Strange Brew description. So the paraphrase is basically the Mackenzie brothers wind up, they're working at this brewery, and they, just like the trailer says, they fall into the knowledge of this really, really terrible thing that's going on. Now, the really terrible thing never really reveals itself to be really, really terrible, except just sort of like we're just supposed to believe that it is. But the thing that makes this funny, the thing that makes this whole movie hilarious, has nothing to do with the actual plot. It has to do with the shtick. This movie is so funny because of who Bob and Doug McKenzie, who Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas are in character. So forget everything that you're going to hear about a plot, about description. You should just watch it because it's just freaking funny. They're so freaking funny. So here's the real description. The real description is, in the request for free beer, Canadian brothers Bob and Doug McKenzie wind up working at Elsinore Brewery. The hapless lads uncover a sinister mind control plot spearheaded by Brewmeister, who's Max Fun. They said Cedo, but isn't it Sido? I thought it was.
I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Well,
I'm never sure. I call him Sido, and I've heard him called Cedo.
His name goes both ways.
Okay, well, there you go. Oh, he's got a cool name. And must stop the scheme, which also involves Uncle Claude, a member of the Elsinore family. As Bob and Doug McKenzie try from taking over the world, they also manage to drink plenty of their favorite sudsy beverage. There we have it.
All right. Now, before we get into it, can I play a clip? It's from Red Letters. It kind of gives some history about.
I was going to give the history, but you could do that.
Well, because it also includes a clip of Rick Moranis too, and then you can add to it.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
For the third season because it was getting really good press, and NBC picked it up.
Right, so that was the sort of first exposure in the U.S., I think.
In Canada, SCTV was 26 minutes. On NBC and its syndicates, it was 24 minutes, and they would have so much of a buffer of commercials. But the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Canada, CBC, the government-run broadcaster, had 2 extra minutes, and they went up to the SCTV gang and said, look, we need 2 extra minutes. We need some CanCon, which is government-mandated
Canadian content.
A
certain percentage of the show has to be specifically Canadian.
Right, representing Canada, Canadian-themed.
On SCTV, the show was a half an hour long, and they wanted 2 minutes to be Canadian. So we said, well, what does that mean? What is less Canadian about us doing what we're doing than what you want us to do? We're doing the show in Canada. We're from Canada. We are Canadians. They said, Dave Thomas and I finally said, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to put on toques and parkas and sit around and fry up back bacon, and drink beer? And they said, yes, that'll be fine. So we did it.
It wasn't enough that.
Yeah. That was the story I was going to tell. Yes. The CanCon thing. And basically they knocked off about I think there was a dozen or so they did. So they put up the cheap set. They made sure it was like a cheap background. They put their Coleman up. They had all the beer cases around, and they drank and smoked and banged out about 12 of these off the top of their heads, total improv. And then that got inserted into the shows as they went along. And somehow they became breakout characters, even though it wasn't meant for the U.S. audience. Those 2 minutes end up being shown on NBC. And that became the breakout thing. And the thing was, it was a throwaway gag, and they were just to stick their finger up to the guy saying, we need more Canadian content. They did that. And so there you go. And from that, they got an album, and from the album, they got a movie. And then Hosermania died really quickly shortly after that.
Hosermania, hilarious. Yeah. I was saying to you, and for just so if in case people don't know that you are our resident Canadian on the panel, the rest of us we're Americans.
Yeah, I've been hiding my accent all this time.
Yeah. See,
what that's about.
In this episode, King Penguin comes out of the Canadian closet. So, but I was saying that, I was born in '76, and I remembered this when I was a kid, right? The whole Bob and Doug McKenzie thing, and that was my first brush with Canadians. Like that was, I know that must be horrifying to you, but that became what I thought Canadians were, right? Where this depiction of it, which is silly, but I was a kid, but unfortunately there were adults who thought that too, so for a long time that was in my head, the Bob and Doug McKenzie thing. So, and because remember they had commercials and they were, it was everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was the breakout for them, and they did so well. I mean, they got the film, they got the commercials and everything. And like I said, the other cast members kind of got a little resentful for them. And because of that, they wrote a specific episode where Bob and Doug McKenzie were the center of the thing. Now, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it was also sort of to bash them a bit too, that they get this super show, that they end up becoming stars because they're breakout characters. And they end up changing the entire show. So it becomes the Great White Palace. There's solid gold dancers, and the guys are wearing tuxedos and they got their hair done in bouffants, and they go to do their opening bit, and it's just two morons sitting there on the stage, talking the way they normally talk, trying to read the cue cards and sounding really stupid. And the show basically gets yanked off the air within 5 minutes of it being on. So
hilarious.
They're kind of like Wayne's World for Canada.
Well, funny you should mention that. Because Mike Myers, when he did Wayne's World, everything he did, it's set in Chicago, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, except for everything he references is from Etobicoke, Toronto. Stan Mikita's is Tim Hortons, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's one of those things where he does a subtler thing about Canadian humor than Bob and Doug were. They're the kind of the bold out there thing. He did Canadian inside jokes that only guys who've been around there and know about these things got. So when we're watching, Wayne's World, they're going, yeah, that's Etobicoke. He's riffing on Canadian stuff, and then pretending it's American, which is one of those things that we do when we go down south. We fake it. We change our accents. We pretend we're one of you. And that's the thing. If you ever go to war with us, you'll be in trouble because you won't know when we cross the border if we're one of them or not.
Wow, cultural appropriation much?
Well, Michael Moore did try to warn us in his film.
He did.
Canadian Bacon.
Yeah, actually, and starring John Candy, another SCTV alum. And I did not like that film at all.
It wasn't.
It was not good. It was really ham-handed and.
I see what you did there.
Ham-handed. Ah, that was funny.
No.
But you know what's funny though? In a way, the plot of this film is very similar to our film next week, which is Halloween 3. I'm just saying.
Is it? Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yes. But more importantly, what the plot of this film is, because they just wanted to riff around it, so they chose an old plot. It's Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
Elsinore Castle is now Elsinore Brewery. They change Hamlet to being a female, but her father is killed. His ghost comes out to tell them about it. Her uncle marries her mother. There you go.
Huh.
It was them doing Hamlet. And that's pretty funny in itself, because you take the dumbest characters they've ever come up with against one of the classic plays, and basically their riff on that, which I thought would be. So if they did a sequel, I was hoping it'd be like Romeo and Juliet or something like that, or Macbeth.
Hilarious.
But so I saw this film when it came out, and I saw it in the theaters because I was a huge SCTV fan when I was in those days. I watched it, when they were airing them the first time around, which I loved. And then when they went on NBC after Saturday Night Live was over, I waited up so I could watch SCTV when they were doing the 90-minute shows. And so, I remember going to the theater to see this. And to be honest, I laughed at parts, but I was sort of disappointed at the time. But watching it later again and again, I kind of grew to like it a lot. It's one of my favorite films. It's a guilty pleasure, really.
It grows on. It definitely grows on you.
Yeah, because it is so dumb, but it doesn't mind being dumb. For example, the fact they've got the scene where Hosehead the dog gets up and flies away to stop Oktoberfest from happening and grows a cape. And it's like, okay, it works in this film because this film doesn't work on logic. It's stupid. It's dumb. It knows it's dumb, but it has fun with it. And because they came from the sensibility, like SCTV was basically really a real postmodern show, in the fact that it was very much about mocking the television of the time and knowing all the tropes and everything. And this film does the same thing. Like, you look at the end of the second act, where the van goes off into the river, crashes, and they show the skyline and the cops sitting there saying, "Oh no, no one will ever survive out there." And it fades out with the flat, this really dramatic scene that in any other movie would be like, "Oh, there's your dramatic moment, the lowest point the heroes are at. There it is, right there." And then they throw in a 2-second intermission to, just to screw with the audience. And I was there, and I watched audience members kind of confusedly get up and start walking to the concession stand, only to have to turn around and get back to their seats in like less than a minute, because they kind of faked them out the way that, but that's a riff on what Python did, because Python did the exact same thing in Holy Grail. They had their intermission. Fake intermission,
yes.
And considering this film was like 90 minutes, if that, throwing an intermission is very cheeky.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the film, the characters, Bob and Doug McKenzie, Rick Moranis, and Dave Thomas. Would you say these characters are more annoying? If there's a scale of annoying to lovable, where would you put these two characters on that scale?
Who wants to answer that first? I'll answer last.
Okay.
Well, okay, so I actually like Bob and Doug McKenzie. They actually really make me laugh, and they come nowhere near Adam Sandler level of "I hate you, I can't handle it." So I would say that they're really good. And the other thing is, it's hard to watch Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis together and not feel like they are just stupid, lovable rogues. There's something totally different about watching these guys than there is watching a lot of other sort of shticky comedy. This was actually really fun. And I know I can remember seeing other things that they sort of did around that time that were also similarly fun. A lot of people tried to copy that, not using the Canadian piece, but copy the success of that. It didn't really work because there's just some weird chemistry between the two of them. So I personally thought that they were not annoying. They were really awesome.
What about you, Josh?
I mean, these guys are the epitome of lovable goofballs. They're, in my opinion, nothing irritating or annoying about them. In fact, I want to know why there isn't 20 years worth of straight content for me to binge right now, rather than seeing them. Because, you do see Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas pop in for like a, voice job here and there where they're together. And what was it, open season when they were the Moose?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we get them together every once in a while, but I don't think it's enough. And when I finished watching the movie, I was like, I want more. I want a lot more.
Well, they did do a cartoon,
That
Adventures of Bob and Doug McKenzie.
That wasn't
lasted less than a season.
That was Brother Bear.
Oh, Brother Bear.
Was it Brother Bear? Okay.
Yeah, Brother Bear. That's it.
I would know that.
That's fair. My bad. Correction. But yeah, they're great.
There was a part 2, right? Wasn't there? I mean, not part 2, but there was sort of a second edition of this.
Was there?
I thought so.
No.
What did I just no.
Strange
just dreamed
Brew too. Hey, that rhymes.
Didn't they do like a TV special?
No, but they did do. That's probably you're probably thinking of that episode of SCTV I was talking about. But no, they that basically after Strange Brew, that was basically the end of it because the whole fad for the thing fizzled out. So people basically said, okay, if that was fun, but that's enough.
I know they made like a Christmas video because they have like the 12 Days of Christmas.
That's from their album, which came out before Strange Brew.
That was definitely that was like on MTV or something.
Yeah, because it was on an album. That was their album. They did 12 Days of Christmas. They did a whole bunch of stuff. And that, again, was basically the two of them got into a recording studio and did about 12 hours worth of recording. And they cobbled together the album from the improv they did. And so as you're hearing them getting increasingly more drunk as they're going through, that was real. They were getting more drunk as they were doing the thing. But they actually created 2 albums out of it because they took some stuff from the original recordings and created a Strange Brew album, which I cannot find anymore, but it had a whole bunch of stuff in it with some songs and clips from the movie. And so they quickly packaged that out to go with the movie. But like I said, the movie didn't do as well as they thought it would. And so that kind of, like everything kind of sort of fizzled and that was it. But as for your question, Kenny, yeah, it's a weird thing because for me, I loved SCTV, I loved the thing. And then there was a while afterwards where people said, oh, that's Canadians. Okay. So there's got to be a little bit of bitterness about it. Not because of what they did, but it's kind of thing that, oh, that's what they think of us now. And it's like, okay, I'm getting kind of sick of hearing that. That wore off and I'm back to liking it again. I mean, I love this movie. The thing about the characters is I think what works for them is, besides the fact that they got like really good chemistry together, is like, it's not a mean-spirited film. Right. The characters aren't mean. They're not doing things to other people, everything. Things happen to them. I mean, the worst they're doing is the trying to rip off the movie theater by throwing the moths into the window or trying to rip off the beer store by putting the mouse in the bottle. And that's it. That's the meanest thing they do. They try to show up to work early. They bring donuts for everybody, even though they're the only people working in the plant and that kind of thing. They're just nice people who are just dumb. But in a good way, they're not obnoxious. They're not ignorant. They're, and anytime that anything mean is happening, if you want to call it mean, it's not really, it's just between the two of them where, oh, I'm going to tell the police it was your fault. And, things that brothers would do together in many ways, I'll turn you in the second I get a chance.
I know you can't speak for all of Canada, but on this episode,
it's a big country, a lot of different people. Don't even speak French.
But on this one, would you say at the time and even now that Canadians were more proud of these characters or more embarrassed by them?
No, at the time, like I said, Hoser Mania was a thing here where everybody embraced it. In fact, it got really bad. They created a parade. And if you read Dave Thomas's book on SCTV, he talks about it. He says he got scared because basically a ton of people showed up in toques and wearing the jackets and everything. And and drinking tons of beer and getting really, really rowdy and drunk and everything. And he got kind of scared for the whole thing. But yeah, everyone loved it. Like there was kind of a thing where they were proud of him at first because they were like, oh yeah, this is, oh, this is great. This is funny because, I mean, Canadians aren't like that, but there's a bit of that. It's like any good satire. It's like there's a little kernel of truth in there. They just made it really big. And
right.
A lot of it was what they were speaking. You'd find more in Northern Ontario and a lot around the hockey towns and everything. So
right.
Hoser and Takeoff and all that stuff would be stuff you'd hear on the bench in the hockey game. So that kind of, back then. And so we embrace it. And then, like I said, for a short while afterwards, when it kept, other people saw it and they were saying, oh, Takeoff and everything, we were going to get Canadians get kind of okay because we're insecure people. Kind of like, okay, we want to get away from this. We don't want to. And then, once again, you embrace it again. And that's the thing. So there's a lot of good jokes. In fact, there's one joke in there that was not intentional that is really funny is the place they go to, the beer store, it's called there. At the time, those stores looked exactly like that. You would walk up to a counter, you would order a beer, and they would push out your 2-4 or your 12-pack through off this rolling dolly, and you'd pay the front, and you'd see only the pictures of it. And it was a very weird place, but it used to be called Brewers Retail, and that was the name of the place. They would not allow the movie because they thought it was bad. It would be a bad influence kind of thing and look bad for their marketing. So Brewers Retail said, "Do not use our sign." So they called it the beer store. Well, nowadays, all the Brewers Retails dropped the Brewers Retail and became the beer store. And now you can walk in and get your cases and everything. It's not much better, but you've got that thing where it's sort of like they kind of echoed the future, unintentionally trying to avoid, getting sued by Brewers Retail. But they throw a lot of little things here. The Canadian National Institute for the Mentally Insane and everything. I mean, that is a very Canadian thing. Like the government buildings are all, they have it. The Canadian National this, the Canadian this, the CNIBC and all this other thing. And we see that, it's like, okay, that's funny. Having the court there when you've got the picture of Trudeau and that's Trudeau Senior there that is sitting beside the Queen in the courtroom, by the way.
Right.
For the not old enough to remember him. Mm-hmm. The Trudeau that sort of knew what he was doing, even though it wasn't that much better.
Oh, wow.
Election's coming up. I don't know if he's going to make it. You won't be seeing much of him anymore.
Uh-oh.
My guess is he will be out in October.
He'll be out?
Out.
All right.
He'll probably keep his seat, but he'll be like,
oot.
See, that's another thing. Nobody says oot. Or that annoys me no end. Nobody says that. Now, if you want to have the proper way it sounds, because maybe you're hearing it wrong, but it's out and about.
Out and about.
Yeah. So the mouse went to the house and he was about doing that. So that's what, if you want to talk about like when you hear a weird sounding out and about, that's the actual sound you hear, not oot and about.
I like oot and about.
Out and about.
I am getting such an education tonight.
I
have no idea.
You go up to Sarnia and you go out and about to the guy's house, and if you're lucky, you don't have a mouse in that house.
So it's not the moose in the hoose.
No, it's never moose in a hoose. Nobody says hoose. Nobody says boot, unless you're wearing one.
And, real quick, I want to talk about. Look, Dave Thomas is awesome.
Yep.
Right. But I always thought Rick Moranis was underrated as a talent.
Yeah, I'll tell you this much. Rick Moranis is, you watch his SCTV stuff, and you realize how wasted he was in Hollywood, because when they took him, they only gave him one type of role. Oh, right. You're going to be the nebbishy, nerdy guy. Because he did so well in Ghostbusters, they figured that's all he can do, and that's all they cast him as. And if you look at his other stuff, like his characters used to, like Jerry Todd, who was this video DJ guy, and he's like, this is Jerry Todd in the morning. Blah, blah, blah. He's funny. His Woody Allen impersonation is hilarious too. And he did so many other characters, and it's like you look at it, and it's like, look at him as Bob. He's like, he's okay, he's sort of nervous and everything, but he's not, a nerd. And it's like, it's weird. They kind of like Hollywood decided, okay, we want you as a type. So this is how we're going to cast you. Every film, you're going to be this, which is probably one of the reasons he got tired. I mean, he wanted to go and live with his family and do, have more time with his family. You notice he just decided, that's it, I'm done. And he kind of just walked away from it all.
My favorite Rick Moranis movie, though, got to be Little Shop of Horrors. But in terms of type, when he did what was that movie where he was the FBI agent? He was in charge of
My Blue Heaven.
My Blue Heaven. Thank you. That's the one. Quite a range of talent in that movie.
Yeah, and he does. He's very talented, very funny guy. And you listen to, and he's very smart. And he was very much about, from what I've read and everything about him, he was very much into like technical stuff and trying to expand video stuff and music and stuff like that. So he did like the Jerry Todd show. He made a whole bunch of musical bits. So it was supposed to be like late night. You're 12 in the morning, and here's this VJ who's going to be showing you crappy videos, and he's got his, this one guy singing Downtown, and it's like cheesy, and you look at it, and it's not like, oh, this is a ha-ha, here's your joke, this is the thing. It's just sort of this weird kind of meta thing, and he was working on it. It's like, I'm doing this because it's strange and it's sort of funny, but it's not laugh out loud funny. It's one of those weird kind of quirky things, and you're watching and going, I don't know what I'm looking at here. And I kind of like it and I kind of don't. It's very weird, but and he's very bright, very, very talented. And he had a range of characters he did. And him and Dave Thomas did a whole bunch of different characters together. They did this thing called Carl's Cuts, where they're both these weird pig-like butchers who basically talk about video editing in a butcher shop. And they do a takeoff of Deliverance at one point, and it's just the weirdest, most bizarre thing. They also do characters, Walter Cronkite and was it Brokaw he was playing? So Dave Thomas would do Walter Cronkite. But the funniest one they ever did was they decided to do a Bob Hope movie, where it was Bob Hope and Woody Allen. So you had two different types, and Bob's like, you got to do a joke for me. And Dave Thomas does a great Bob Hope. And Woody Allen's sitting there doing this meta kind of strange thing about, I don't understand. He's like, what are you doing there? I don't get this. Oh, and someone's got to take over for 3 seconds. I have a work thing coming up. Sorry.
With his old-fashioned phone. Going back to Rick Moranis, I've always thought the guy was super talented. And I think he makes a great point that Hollywood really didn't. They kind of squandered him, which they do with a lot of really talented people. Yeah, and the sad thing is that he is, he's kind of out the business right now, and he took himself out basically because he got tired of the way that he was being cast. Now there's I remember he did an interview on the Nerdist podcast.
Yeah. And it was kind of blistering.
Yeah, it was relatively recently. I think a couple of years ago. So, and it's audio only, I believe. I don't think there's video for it. So I probably should have listened to it before we did this show again. But it's been a while since I heard it. But I just wanted to point that out about Rick Moranis. I think the next thing we should get into, and no disrespect to Dave Thomas. Dave Thomas is awesome, but I really I wanted to say that about Rick Moranis. We're getting some kind of feedback or something from you, Jen.
Oh.
And you're on mute, Josh. Yeah, you're on mute. I don't know if he's on mute on purpose or not. But anyway, so this film, wait, you know what? We got to talk about one other person real quick before we get into the go into the movie. I know this is a long preamble to the movie, but Max von Sydow,
and his false teeth.
He's a fantastic actor.
Yeah,
but was he like? He had some pretty interesting choices in the 80s. Flash Gordon, this one, and he did some.
Hey, yeah, that's their second Max von Sydow film,
right? And I think he was in an Exorcist what was it? Exorcist, the real weird one. Wasn't he in that?
No,
one?
he was in the original Exorcist.
Right,
He was the priest.
Right, but he was in the one that was it the third one? There was one that was really bad.
The second one, he wasn't in it.
I'm sure he was. Yeah,
No, his character was dead.
No, but you know, man, it's Hollywood.
I refuse to believe you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if I pull up his thing, but it's funny. He's in some great stuff.
Yep,
and
he's been in some shocky stuff.
Yeah, I wonder what his process is. Like, did he die?
I think he's still alive.
I would love to ask him, like, what's his process?
Yeah, because he was in Star Wars. Force Awakens.
But that was 90. I mean, I'm 95. I'm sorry, 2015. So that was a while ago.
I'm pretty sure. I haven't heard that he's died.
So I wonder what his process was. It's like if the check was right, you know.
Yeah. You're going to pay me? I'll do it.
Right, pretty much.
What am I supposed to do? Well, you're going to be this beer guy, and you're going to try to take over the world, and that's it.
He's like, oh, I did it before. I'll do it again. Joshua, are you there?
You're muted.
You're muted.
We can't hear a thing you're saying.
Yeah. Try. Let's see. Maybe we'll get him back. Hop back in.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Yeah.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
so I was saying earlier, just to so I can get this off my chest, we're not going to talk about Dave Thomas's brilliant run on Grace Under Fire.
Hey, he got a paycheck, and that's all he cared about.
I love Dave Thomas, and the Wendy's is amazing.
No, you know what? I do like Dave Thomas a lot. I like his stuff. He didn't break out as well. He did a bunch of TV stuff here and there, but he has a really interesting. Like, he's one of the writers too from SCTV. Like, he was one of the. Like, it wasn't like Saturday Night Live where everyone kind of tried to jockey to get their stuff in. They were pretty collaborative. The women had a harder time with their bits, but when they did do it, when Catherine O'Hara and Andrea Martin did get stuff out, it was pretty brilliant and bizarre and something the guys wouldn't do. I'm taking my own head, screwing it on right, and no man's going to tell me how to change.
Right.
That's a play that they do. Libby Wolfson, the liberated woman. But
I think Dave Thomas made a great career out of being, hey, it's that guy.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I don't know where he would have fit in. Like, Rick Moranis had it easier, Martin Short had it easier, and John Kennedy had it easier because they could sort of be, I can fit you into this kind of role. And so Martin Short had enough energy that they put him in these kind of weird roles, and some very awful movies, and some very decent movies, and some very, very bad movies. But he got a good career out of it. I mean, he got his run on Saturday Night Live as well, and he did well for himself in the States.
Right.
And I think that's like a lot of Canadian actors basically say, yeah, eventually I got to go down there because that's where the money's at.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Just like Drake. So, where are we at now?
All right, so let's talk about the movie because we're like 40 minutes in and we haven't really talked about the movie. So, the opening of the film,
one of my favorites. I wish the entire film was like that. I would love that.
It's open. It kind of remind me of there was a movie by Andy Kaufman.
Okay.
With Jim Carrey played Andy Kaufman in it.
Yeah.
Man on the Moon.
Man on the Moon. It wasn't. That one was. It kind of had an opening. I don't want to say like that because it's different, but it's similar. I don't know. But anyway, that kind of what they call it, meta opening, something like that.
Yeah.
I just love it though. That what a interesting way to start a movie. Like it really gets you ready for the movie, what you're about to expect. So
I consider they got a completely drugged out of its mind lion. I mean, it had to be because they grab its tail and they start cranking it like they're trying to start up an engine or something like that. I'm going, that lion, because you don't see chains or anything, that lion must be like completely medicated. And MGM had to make sure that they had the actual lion roar at the end of the film to say, no, wait, we're still putting our stamp on this. But having it open with it belching and you turning around the mat and seeing how everything's done, I love that. But I especially love Mutants in the Year 2150, I think is what the film is called. They're trying to
kind of want to watch that movie too.
I do. I wanted to watch that whole movie because I love it. Because it was like, hey, let's make a film, like using going into a garage and having the car lowered on a jack just to get the effect that it's lowering down and ignoring the fact that all you can see is garage around it. And I don't care. My favorite line in any movie is, "No way, radiation has made me an enemy to society or humanity." It's like, oh, what a great line. Fleshy-headed mutant, are you friend or a foe?
It's funny. Back in the day, Jen, are you there?
You're kind of scratchy.
Yeah, you're scratchy. Back in the day, a lot of times you would just go to the movies, not always to see something specific. You just get to the theater and you look up and you go, "Oh, what's playing? Oh, Strange Brew. That sounds interesting." And then you know what I mean? Like, so I wonder how many people who went to go see that film did that, because that was more prevalent back in the day. And then they got into that movie and they were like, "What? Wait, what's going on here?"
Yeah, I'm sure, because especially when you're throwing all this stuff at you, you're like, "What is all this stuff? I don't get it. Why are the police cars yellow?"
Oh shit!
Which they're not anymore, but they were back in the day. I'm just going to check something because I want to find out how well the movie actually really did, because I don't know.
Oh, I have it.
I mean, 74% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is bizarre. Getting that
doubled its budget.
Yeah, doubled its budget.
Well, yeah, considering the budget was probably nothing. I wonder what. Let me see.
No, my guns don't cost, man. No, it said it was made for $4 million and made $8.5 million.
$4 million. It doesn't show.
Yeah,
I think the biggest expense they had was driving that van into Lake Ontario. Yeah. And I remember when I was a kid when they were filming it, because here's a bit of Canadian, and we're filming in Toronto, and this is one of the first few films that were filming in Toronto. Seeing the Toronto skyline and the van, they had a picture in the Toronto Sun the day after they filmed that stunt, and you see the shot of the picture of the van flying through the air, and there's the Toronto skyline behind. It's like, okay, wow, look, we see our own city in the films. Oh my God, this is amazing! It's, like I said, Canadians and their insecurity. We see that and we get all gushy about it.
You know what I'm gonna do though, as the overlord, president, and CEO of Indie Radio, I'm going to say that every episode that comes on Indie Radio has to have at least 2 minutes of CanCon.
That's right. Canadian content, very important, mandated by the government. It was actually, the weird thing is CanCon was mostly for radio.
Right.
So it was the whole idea of like, we got a bunch of Canadian artists, you have to play 30%, I think it was, some of your programming each hour had to be Canadian content, which allowed bands like Rush and Tragically Hip and everything, allowed them to have bigger careers than they probably normally would have.
Hey,
so Nickelback, yeah. Who else? Gordon Lightfoot,
Bieber,
Justin Bieber. He did well in the States to start with, so. But they could play it and say, "Hey, it's Canadian content."
Jen, you're here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you go.
Yay!
Okay, so let's get through the. How do you guys? How do you think the movie Jen flowed for you?
I don't know if that's actually a term I would use for this movie. I mean, so I sat down. I haven't seen this in a couple of years. I sat down, I watched it, and it felt like before I knew it, the movie was over. And in fact, I asked my kid if he wanted to watch it with me, and he was like, "Nah, I don't want to watch that. It sounds silly." And only the sound of my laughter brought him out, and he was like, "Oh, this is pretty funny." So, I mean, in terms of are you asking in terms of the plot?
No. I mean, every movie, no matter what, has a flow to it. So You know, I think you answered it. You said it went by pretty fast. That's a good sign. When a
it
movie
went
feels
by-
long and it's only an hour and a half, that's not a good sign.
It went by really fast, but I gotta say, it didn't feel to me like the plot was even the point of watching the movie. The point of watching the movie was just sort of to be entertained by these two crazy characters. That's exactly what it felt like. But it was infinitely entertainable. I mean, there was so much entertainment value in this that I think I would pick this movie above almost everything else that we've seen this season if I was stuck on a desert island and had to watch a movie over and over and over again.
Oh, so if that question comes up and this happens to be number 1 or 2, there's your answer.
Yeah, no kidding. It was really entertaining.
I don't know, man, because what was that movie that we all loved?
Death Race 2000.
Death Race.
No.
Day of the Dead.
Oh, no. He's being facetious. Casino Royale.
Yeah, Casino Royale with you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a difference, okay? So here's the difference. You saw Casino Royale, which tried really hard to be a comedy and tried to be hip and edgy, and it failed so miserably. And then you see this movie where it almost seems effortless. But you know they've thought about it and how they're going to set up the jokes. Even though a lot of the stuff's improv, they're still sort of setting up their things, their little bits and everything. And it seems effortless, and it is funny. And that's the difference between good comedy and bad comedy is you don't see that they're trying. Because there's nothing worse than watching someone try to be funny.
Yes. You know, one thing that I was pleased with this film is, and you see this a lot with Saturday Night Live sketches that go on to be movies, is a lot of times the sketch works just great for a 10-minute sketch or whatnot. And so when you start you stretch it out to an hour and a half, you get tired of it because it really wasn't never intended for it. So they did a pretty good job of taking something that was not even
a 2-minute sketch,
right?
Throwaway sketch. They turned it into a film.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that.
This movie reminds me of watching Uncle Buck.
Mm-hmm.
It has that same. It's just silly for the sake of being silly, but it's fun. Silly. It's not it like you don't have to take it seriously to have a good time with it.
Right.
And it doesn't annoy you the way that some of the movies that I think are supposed to be funny, they just aren't. They just fail so miserably.
I take issue with you said. I take Uncle Buck very serious.
I love Uncle Buck. That's what I'm saying. Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
He thinks it's a documentary.
You collect life lessons from Uncle Buck. I didn't mean to get in the way of your mentor
yes.
relationship. I'm so sorry.
Kids take Uncle Buck very serious.
It's a millennial thing, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not a millennial. I wish I was a millennial.
No, that's true. You're not, are you?
I am.
Are you? I thought you were older than us.
No.
He's like, no.
I know I'm not a boomer, thank God, but
okay, so who did you guys like? I hate to get into the whole who did it better, but who did you guys like more, Bob or Doug McKenzie?
Oh, you can't like one more than the other.
Oh no.
Yeah. I think the question should be, if you had to choose one, who would you have a beer with?
Dude, that's like asking which is your favorite Twix, left or right.
As they said in the movie, that was the first time that the two have ever been separated. That bit where he's like, well, we'll see you around. He's trying to act all tough and everything, and Rick Moranis is like crying. Oh, it's the first time we've ever been apart, ever. And it's like you can't have one without the other, and that's the thing about that movie.
You can choose him, but I'm still coming along, eh?
That's it.
Well,
and the dynamic between the characters, you have to have one with the other. One is trying to be serious, trying to do the job they're supposed to do, but he's kind of nervous and kind of wimpy. And the other one is like, he wants to pretend he knows it all just to impress everybody, but he doesn't know anything. And
what does he say? I'll be selling cigarettes and
yeah, and they'll be loving you all night long, eh? What about you? I'll be out selling cigarettes in the back.
Even when they try to be creepy, it's still hilarious.
Oh, when they're doing the tough guy act with all the prisoners sitting around, do you want to smoke? No way. I want to keep my lungs nice and fresh for when they fry me. And it's like things like that, just stupid lines. And you knew the punchline was coming when they say lawyers are for sucks, and the guy comes in, your lawyer is here. You knew that was coming. But that wasn't the important. That was just to get out of the scene. The funny part was all them doing the little, their little talk around all the prisoners after seeing how scary they were. And, thank God, the big scary guy happens to be a white guy in this movie as opposed to the normal cliche that they put in those movies all the time. So that was good. It was different for a change, eh?
Love it.
I don't know if it was intentional, but they got just find a big, scary, bald guy.
Hilarious.
You guys want to smoke?
He was scary, actually.
He was.
Scary, yeah.
But, and there's so many stupid little scenes like that. And it's just throwaway lines that they do everything, It's like, and stupid things, how they refer to things. Like, so the disc comes out and he calls them bootlegs. Oh, it's bootlegs. Let's put it on the record. Oh, it sounds like a new wave English band. I don't like it. Throws it away. Stupid things, but they're just funny in the context because it's sort of like it's just two very clueless people trying to get by in the world, and all they really care about is just getting their beer.
They may be clueless, but there were a couple of important safety messages in
Okay.
the movie. The first being about the stepping out of your car when you're.
Oh God!
Your tires are insulators, eh? He put our stereo together. It's like that's the he's brilliant because he knows all this stuff about electricity because he put our stereo together.
He's a genius. He knows the Atlas.
I feel like that's legit. I could see
Well,
that.
it is. Yeah. If you have an electrical wire around your car or whatever, don't get out of the car. The tires are insulators. You'll be fine.
I thought it was very astute coming from these guys.
It was.
And then, of course, the drinking and driving message a little bit later.
Oh, my favorite, though, is the two meta moments in there. One where they're talking about, do you know in movies they drive? They don't really drive. They're just towed. And the guy turns and goes, oh, yeah, really? And he starts having this conversation with it. And then he turns, oh! And it's like, okay, that was being self-aware. And then, of course, when it's like, oh, take the hallway to go to there. And he goes, hallway to the place. How convenient. Take off. And he leaves. It's like, because even he knew that you're stretching at that point to make everything all connected to this one place.
I think the other thing that really works, which doesn't always work in every movie because sometimes they try to use it and it just comes off even more ridiculous than perhaps it really is. But although Rick Moranis seems to pull it off really well, is the whole breaking the fourth wall thing, which just so totally works for these guys because they can deadpan so well. Remember when Rick Moranis was in Spaceballs? He did the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really cool because it really worked, but it takes a certain, you have to have a certain presence to make it work. Otherwise, it just comes off being ridiculous.
I'm glad you mentioned Spaceballs because I completely forgot about that. As far as Rick Moranis, I think that's one of my favorite Rick Moranis roles. And it's once
really
again, it's someone who is so dumb but is so full of themselves. And that's what's so funny about it. And he's like, yeah, okay, he's sort of playing a nerdy character, but he's not because he's playing a tough guy who just happens to be a small tough guy who's got a big helmet. Large.
My second favorite Rick Moranis role.
What's your first favorite?
My Blue Heaven.
Oh,
yeah, I think that's one of mine too. No, well, it's one of mine, but my favorite is Little Shop of Horrors. You can't get better than Little Shop of Horrors. Although same cast, right? I mean, lots of the same people in Little Shop of Horrors as in My Blue Heaven.
I don't think I've seen Little Shop of Horrors. The Rick Moranis.
Oh my God! You know
This
what?
one,
After the podcast, do nothing but go watch Little Shop of Horrors.
Isn't Steve Martin play the dentist in that?
Yes, he
And
does.
Bill Murray, is it Bill Murray who's the patient?
It's hilarious. Yes, it's hilarious.
Okay.
I mean, I'm familiar with the show. I just don't think I've seen Rick Moranis' version.
He's
Yeah,
got amazing vocal talent.
It's Frank Oz who did that, right?
Yeah.
Like it was the Henson picture.
Yep.
Yeah. So there you go. Go see it.
That's the Little Shop of Horrors.
I'll go to my local cinema.
As opposed to the original with Jack Nicholson.
What do you guys think? This is such a stupid question to ask.
No, go ask it. Hey, there's no stupid questions here, eh?
Oh, I'm curious.
You realize what we just watched?
Because I'm a genius. I know exactly what to answer. So go ahead.
Yeah, he's a genius.
I have to interrupt this stroke fest. Hey.
Okay.
Hey.
But hey, now you're American. Hey.
Hey, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm dipping in and out.
Take off.
But there was a lot of holes in the plot there, eh?
Really? No way.
So many.
What holes in the plot are you talking about? It's a completely airtight plot. I don't know what you're talking about at all.
What you're saying is nonsensical.
I mean, they figured out how to stop them by getting the dog to fly out there. So what are you talking about? Made perfect sense because he drank that beer and he ate that food. And all that. He was hungry.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Okay, you cops out there, you all went past that stoplight. That's a moving violation. Oh, sorry. Another line there I just love too.
I call bullshit on the flying dog. I don't think it's real.
No. You knew it was real because when that cape went off and it looked behind, I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. And you know what? I don't think that was intentional. I think just somehow the dog just turned when they yanked. I don't even think the cape was supposed to come off. I think the cape flew off and they kind of said, we're keeping that because that is so memorable.
No, don't shortchange that dog. In Canada, they have a lot of great improvers, and even the animals.
Yep,
improvers.
That's true.
Yep.
So that was the dog's little contribution to the film.
That was his moment. Yes. It did, and you have to admit, you remember that scene. If I mention it, you think about it. Yep, the dog looking back at his cape as it flew away. Mm-hmm. Stupid thing, but you always remember it for some reason.
Brilliant.
Okay, you were going to ask a brilliant question.
And another thing is, what do you guys think about how it concluded? Did you buy it?
Did we buy it?
I think it was the only thing that would have worked.
Yeah. They stopped the people from having the beer, and they drove off with the truck. What else do you need? Or are you talking about how he put out the fire?
It was a fairy tale ending, right? I mean, they lived happily.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing is, what I liked about this film is the romantic stuff that was going on ended up not being with the brothers. End up being the ones together. That was their arc. Was they end up back together and everything was fine. You know, they drove off into the sunset together. So
I love it. I'm telling you, this is getting you ready for next week's movie. The same similar plot. So
yeah, and there was drunks in that one too. So
I don't know. I mean, are you guys disappointed there wasn't a sequel?
You know what? I wish there was. No. I wish there was. I want to see if they could have done something with it. If they took the plot somewhere weird and different, because I know that's what they would have done. Because they wouldn't have rehashed and say, okay, let's have them do this, but it's something similar. I mean, because at least this movie just, like, if you remember all the movies in the 90s where they took TV shows and they decided to turn them into movies and they were all the same plot. The exact same plot. Some bad person is trying to take their land or this thing from them. And so that's our plot that we're going to have to hinge all the rest of the stuff on the movie. And it's like, oh. And this one wasn't that. This was something really, said, you know what we're going to have? We're going to have some guy right in a brewery trying to take over the world with contaminated beer.
Hilarious.
How is he going to do it? What's the end game? Who knows? We don't know. We don't find out his real motivations or anything about him. We just know he likes to have the lights go up, and that's another funny scene for him. Max von Sydow has a really funny scene where he's standing there and he's looking depressed because when what's going on, he's facing that wall with all the lights, and the guy says, "Do you want me to turn the lights on again?" No. I can't even do the way he does it, but the way he does it's just funny because it's like it's just a throw. No, don't bother. No, I'm too depressed. But it's. I love that because it's they play up those big moments that you'd find in a film, and then they kind of just deflate them right away. And at the same time, they don't mind being cartoonish. It's like when the two of them are wearing the steak suits. When the dog's looking at them, they look like steaks. It's like, why bother being realistic? And them playing their own parents. I don't know if you caught that when they open the door and they walk in on their parents. And it's Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas in drag. with Mel Blanc's voice.
Hilarious. Wait, hold on a second.
We're gonna show the dog. All right, let's go get the dog. I love this.
That is so funny. That is funny. Yes,
it's like, and they didn't. Like they said, they don't care. It's like, okay, you know what's gonna be stupid? The dog can fly. What? Just do it. And the directions they give, by the way, is how you would get to Oktoberfest in Kitchener, Ontario. So if you go play that back when he's talking. Now you don't need Siri or anything. You can just remember the directions that Bob and Doug give to the cops. Or no, you get the hose head. Sorry, my mistake. To the dog. And you can get to Oktoberfest, which, strange enough, those scenes were not shot in in Kitchener, where Oktoberfest is normally held, because the police officer that they go to, the guy comes and goes, "That's a Toronto skunk." The police officer is wearing a Region of Peel badge, which is where I'm from, which meant that they filmed that at this place not far from me called Hansa House, which is a German pavilion where they do hold these kind of things. So that was kind of neat. Once again, trivia.
See, I mean, like, you can't go wrong with this film. It's a very good film, and we don't normally do comedy, so
no, because comedies usually go the other way. Where they're just
This is like our first comedy.
You mean funny comedy?
Wait. Some of those movies we watched before weren't comedies?
No, not at all.
Wow.
Jen has to leave. Before Jen leaves, can you give us your scores?
Yeah, but you know what? Do me a favor and okay, so because I've got these all out of order and sort of in some of them have scores and I forgot the actual designation. So it's tell me again. It goes overall. No, it doesn't start with overall. It starts with
story.
It's on the screen.
It starts with
story.
No, I can't say. I can't even read that screen. What the heck?
Story.
I'm telling you a story.
So
Honestly,
story. I have a story. I only have a 6. That's my lowest score for this story. I have a 6. Sorry. What's the next one say?
Acting.
Oh, acting. Acting. I gave this an 8.
All right.
I just love these guys. Score and sound design. I actually gave an 8 as well. Production quality, I gave an 8. And overall entertainment value, I gave a 10.
Wow.
Yep. I'm serious. I could seriously watch this movie again and again and again.
Oh, this is nice to hear. No angry people, I think, will be after this. This is good.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right.
Because there's some films we walk away angry, we don't want
Not this one. You won't be disappointed. And I'm sorry I had to duck out early, but I do have to duck out early.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Jen.
All right. Okay.
Thanks.
All right, I'll do mine. I gave story a 5.
Ouch.
No. I mean, it wasn't a Hamlet or anything.
But it was.
I gave acting a 7. The acting was great. Those guys are amazing. Score design, sound. I gave it a 6. Just some of the 80s music was. I didn't love a lot, but I thought it was good. Production quality, I gave a 6. I thought the production quality was, good for what it was, So I gave it a 6. And overall entertainment value, I gave it an 8. This movie is very entertaining. It holds up after all these years, and I think that it's a terrific film. So it gets a 32 score for me. We'll go to Joshua.
Okay. Well, for story, what can I say? It's Hamlet. I gave it an 8.
Oh, wow.
I mean, seriously, it flowed so well. Yeah, some of the stuff was a little off the wall, but I think it fit nicely. So, yeah, I think it deserves an acting. I also gave it an 8 because there was not one performance in this movie where I'm like, well, that's just out of place. I thought everything fit very well, and that's very important to me. I think the how a performance fits in a movie is a lot better than how one actor can, drive it home because if they're like seriously out acting everybody, it stands out. So everyone was really on the same page here. Score, sound, and design. My lowest score, 6, because like you mentioned before, some of it was just doesn't age very well. Very 80s sound effects and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Production quality. What can I say? I love the look of a Canadian show, Canadian film, and I gave it a 7. If there's anything that says Canada more than this, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And overall entertainment value, unfortunately, because I don't believe it to be, that quintessential perfect something, I couldn't give it a 10. But I did give it a 9 because I would watch this over and over again. In fact, I was watching it, and my kids popped in, and they're like, "What are you watching?" And they never left. So fun for the whole family, and it doesn't, it doesn't talk down to you or anything like that. It's just something everybody can enjoy for what it is. So 9 from me.
So it's fun for the whole family, much like the movie Showgirls was.
Different kind of
depending on the family.
All right. Okay, so you gave it a 38 overall. All right. So what about you, King?
Story, I'm going to give it I'm tossed between 8 and 7. I'm going to give it a 7. Yeah, no. And you know what? I'm going to give it an 8. Sorry, change it to an 8. Do you know why? Because, as I said, there is an actual act break. There is an actual flow to the thing. There's the traditional story acts and everything that are in there for something that should be just a bunch of them, stupidity. It actually follows through with those things. It's playing off of Hamlet, and it's trying to fit it into that. It's actually not a bad story. It seems like it's just a random bunch of scenes, but it's not. There's an actual flow through, and like I said, I love the end of the act. Where on the dock where it's all dramatic and the music's playing and everything. Acting, an 8. As Joshua pointed out, everyone was good at it. There was no really weak actors at all. Everybody played their part really well. And the 2 leads are, very likable. And that's nice to have in a film where you actually like the people you're watching. There's so many films nowadays with unlikable characters, and you're just like, okay, I just have to watch these people. Sound design and everything, 6. It's, it is dated. It's mono. There's nothing spectacular about it. A couple of interesting thoughts, but production quality, it's cheese. It's a 7, but like the laser effects and the goofy stuff like that. I think the only good effect that one of my kids, oh, that's CGI. I go, that's not CGI. Was when the father appears out of the video game, and they kind of like,
right,
and that was animation, and somebody actually did that. And it's like, well, that's CGI. I said, no, it looks good enough to be bad CGI, but it's not. And entertainment value, yeah, a 9. I love this film. I can bring it out twice a year and watch it without having to stop it midway through or find something else to do. I enjoy the stupid thing. I really do. And I really wish they would make Mutants of the Year 2150 because I want to see that whole film.
But you say you wish they did what?
Made that movie that they started off with.
Oh,
I wanted to see that, 4 years after World War IV. Especially when he pulls up the Statue of Liberty, holds it up, Statue of Liberty. Act, stupid.
There's one thing that one particular scene we didn't talk about. I mean, we talked about the van going into the river.
Yes.
But we didn't talk about, the police showing up at the bottom.
Oh, yes. Of course. I mean, yeah, that's the thing.
On the window.
And him pulling out his ID to show to the cop. Wait a minute. He's sitting there underwater. They're drinking out of the air, out of the beer bottles. He goes in, pulls his wallet to show his ID to the cop.
Okay.
That's pretty damn funny. Yeah, and his reaction is like somebody who's been pulled over. And I think that van is probably still at the bottom of Lake Ontario. I'd like to think it's there. They probably would have pulled the engine out and everything so they wouldn't pollute or anything, but I'm hoping that van's still there.
I want to visit it now.
Yeah, I would go to diving, have a diving tour of the van from Strange Brew. I'll have to look that up. Because, like I said, the skyline is not like that. The docks they're on are gone now. It's a lot of condos and everything. Sky Dome hadn't even been built yet. So, yeah.
There should at least be a marker out there on the water.
Resting place of Bob and Doug's van. So there you go. That was Strange Brew. How did we do overall with that? Because the movies that make the meal, of course, as you know, you have to have maple syrup and back bacon and beers. So that's all you need. So good day. Thank you for the meals that make a movie.
Yeah. Hey. All right. So we have a new leader in the club.
Oh my gosh! It beat out Dawn of the Dead. I didn't expect it to go that high. Wow.
Yes. Strange Brew is now overtaken Dawn of the Dead. So now it's between Dawn of the Dead and Strange Brew.
Two complete polar opposites. Oh, that would be one hell of a fight between those two.
Yeah.
I want to see that crossover.
See, that would have been a good sequel for Bob and Doug McKenzie. They have to fight zombies. Oh, that would be awesome. Because, they wouldn't know at first that they're zombies. And they would be treated like, oh, take off. Hey, go. What are you eating him for? And then by the end, you'd be like, here, take my brother.
Hilarious. Yeah, so Strange Brew is the number one now.
Wow. And overall, I think it's a high score, too, if I remember, because Dawn of the Dead, I think, kind of was one of our higher marked movies, wasn't it?
Yeah, it overtook Dawn of the Dead.
But I meant overall, like all 3 years.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Wow. Okay. So, well, folks, tune in for next week. Will it be unseated? Will Dawn of the Dead or Strange Brew be unseated by Halloween 3, Season of the Witch?
Well, we can only hope. Let me get you guys ready for next week's film, which I can't wait to watch again.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
I love this movie, and you know what I'm going to be playing next week on the show. I'm not going to say it, Joshua. You're going to answer the question of what sound I'm going to be playing on the show. Okay, so here we go. Next week's episode, we will be reviewing the classic 1982 film Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, the only movie without Michael Myers in the Halloween story. Hospital emergency room, Dr. Daniel Dan Kalis, played by Tom Atkin, and Ellie Greenbridge, the daughter of a murder victim, uncover a terrible plot by mask maker Colonel Cochran. I can't even say it. It's the tongue twister. A madman who's planning a Halloween mass murder utilizing an ancient Celtic ritual. The ritual involves. Well, I don't want
to. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. He hasn't seen it.
October 20. It came out October 22nd, 1982. So we're coming up to an anniversary of the film, and
one that'll be marked by millions.
Oh yeah, I will be definitely. And it's directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. Do you know why that's interesting?
Why is that interesting?
Because Tommy Lee Wallace was one of the first people to don the Michael Myers mask in the original film.
Ah, and that's what gave him the credit to do that.
Yes. Tommy Lee Wallace actually went on to have a pretty decent directing career.
Do you know any other films he's done?
Yeah, he's directed Fright Night.
Okay.
He also directed It, the original.
The TV miniseries.
Yeah, he directed that. Yeah. So Tommy Wallace, Tommy Wallace.
At least he had the sense to put Tim Curry into that makeup.
Yes. And I'm sorry, Friday Night Part 2. Oh, Max Headroom. Yeah, man, he's
a very eclectic bunch of work.
So yeah, he was good. Flipper, the 1995 TV series. So but anyway, but this is his classic. This is
this is his Citizen Kane.
Yes. So that'll be next week. So Josh, how can we get you on social media?
Well, as always, you can find me on the Twitters at SkitCom. You know what? If there's a place to sign up, if you look for Skit Comic, that's me. It's a household name.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you can get me at Kente F on Twitter and Kente Ferguson on Instagram. And then you can go to our website, indyradio.org. That's indyradio.org. How can we get you, Terry?
You can get me on kingpenguin@gmail.com. Twitter is the Unreal Professor Psycho. You can Professor Psycho's Movie Madhouse is the website.com to see a whole bunch of odd and bizarre things. Hey, I forgot to mention one thing about this movie. I completely forgot. This is probably the first film that got the line wrong and put it in everybody's head, maybe. Luke, I am your father. Except, well, you're Luke, I am your father, you knob. But I think this movie is the one that put all the people thinking that that's what Darth Vader actually said in his movie, because I think this came out just after.
Yeah, I was thinking would that be a spoiler at the time?
The movie'd been out for 3 years, and it's just was before VHS became a big thing. So if you hadn't seen it, too bad. It didn't matter. You weren't going to see it again, supposedly.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
There you go. Get your Blu-ray copies of this now, folks, because this is a classic, awesome film.
And make sure you have your beer.
And yeah, don't forget to have a beer. Don't smoke, though. It's bad for you.
All right, now take off, you bunch of knobs.
Yeah, good day.